if they want to.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul Dirienzo. Got another great show live here at the studios of M&N. And my guest returning, hasn't been for a while now, Dana Beal.
Hi.
Hey, Dana's back. And
Yep.
just like the old days. And remember when we used to do WBAI every night?
Oh,
we did
yeah,
that for like months.
I get those calls usually in the middle of the night.
Uh-huh.
Wake up.
Right, we're going
but
on the
then
radio.
that was the time we got the call early in the morning. You want to go on the morning show? Yeah, right.
Right, you didn't want to get up. You were saying, why are you bothering me? You know, but you came.
No,
What
I
made you
came.
decide to come?
I'll do anything for airtime. I'll kill for airtime.
I know, a lot of people.
No,
I know.
like, the big thing is this month this weekend I went out to San Francisco. I stayed in the house of our friend Dennis Perrone, the man who legalized medical marijuana.
Prop 215, right?
And went up on Saturday to an Ibogaine benefit at the Sweetwater Music Hall, which is a kind of a Grateful Dead band venue.
Sure.
And of course, Ibogaine is
In Marin
got
County?
a lot of buzz in the dead scene because the dead scene has people in it with heroin problems, and they like psychedelic drugs.
Jerry.
Yes, yes. So so there's a kind of a cachet going on there, and the big news was we had the Parkinson's patient who's on YouTube, who's taken Ibogaine in microdose to get rid of his Parkinson's disease.
Right.
And
So we're not.
Well.
I'm not a medical scientist, Dana. So
No.
I'm not going to take.
No,
I'm
no.
not going to detract or endorse your theory that Ibogaine cures Parkinson's, because a
It's
lot of
not
people
a
suffer from
theory.
that.
It's not
I
a
don't want to
theory.
give people false hope.
No, but it's not a theory. It's a result. And I've checked it out. Other people have given Ibogaine in other dose levels for Parkinson's, and usually if you give the big dose, they get an improvement that lasts about 4 months, or they are practically better, and then they had to start using microdoses of Ibogaine. The thing that we did with patient D is we gave him microdoses from the beginning.
Is that the patient who's being experimented on?
Well, he's taking it, and he really wants to keep taking it. He's very, very paranoid because he has to go to Mexico to get treated.
So that's a great
He really doesn't
discovery.
want to go back to prison because he went to prison in the 80s, it turned out, for doing a screenplay about a marijuana smuggling scheme.
Was that like obscenity?
They treated him as a co-conspirator.
Really?
But this is a very interesting guy. He's a friend of Paul Krasner's. His name is Dean Kornstrom. And his brother was on the bus with Kankese,
Oh, really?
the further bus.
Mm-hmm. The famous bus.
The famous
Electric
bus.
Kool-Aid acid test bus.
Yes, that bus. And so, he already worked in, the psychedelic world. He worked with Nick Sands, making prodigious quantities of orange sunshine, which of course was ALD 52.
Not
LSD.
Not OJ.
Well, no, but what it was an attempt to get around the LSD law by, an early analog. And I took ALD 52, and it was 50 times more psychedelic than LSD.
50 times more psychedelic
with
than
the
LSD.
same amount of hallucinations, but 50 times more psychedelic.
Like, did you enter some science fiction world from a
No,
Philip
group
K.
mind.
Dick novel or something?
We were all part of a group mind, like a Philip Dick novel.
Right.
Yeah.
So people have told me you were never the same after that trip.
I don't know about that. I think that the interesting thing was I came back from Spokane, where we all tripped and were transported in time 20 centuries back to the site of the Passion of Christ, which is kind of interesting trip to be on. All of a sudden you're somewhere else in time, somewhere else.
Why is Western
in space.
civilization based on a religion where a dead body is hanging off a cross in the most macabre?
Well, because he didn't die.
And they wear it around their neck.
But he didn't die.
Is that why?
That's the reason, and that's the mystery. And of course, in the Bible, they in both John and Matthew, they specify that he consumed the contents of a big kind of a grail,
A cup.
a cup, which they had they held up an extract of vinegar and gall to his lips.
What's gall? Like bile?
Extract of bitter roots.
Bitter
it's not
roots.
specified.
It's not. And what do you think those bitter roots are?
Well, pharmacologically, I know one really good thing for stopping ischemia, because it's patented for that.
What's ischemia?
Ischemia is what actually kills people on the cross.
Oh, okay.
You lean forward because it's the only way you can rest, and it cuts off your windpipe.
I see.
So you gradually suffocate, and you have a global stroke.
Okay.
Well, if you could get something that would stop a global stroke for 3 hours, then you have to get cut down at exactly 6 o'clock because it's the Sabbath, right? To comply with Jewish law, the Romans had to cut you down, and the idea was you would survive, and it would be a miracle, and then you'd basically
take over.
Yeah, well, it would be a one-up on the Romans. The only problem is they stabbed him. Oh shit!
They stabbed him.
That
wasn't expected.
Well, actually, it should have been expected, but.
But then you're saying he died. He didn't
well,
live.
the speculation is that he was revived, lived for a while, and then died.
From the stab wound.
Yeah.
And what did he do during the time he was alive?
He walked around. He was alive.
Really?
So they won one against the Romans.
I see. But then he died anyway, so that was like, that's why he took like Paul and the apostles to spread it around.
Yeah, and Paul actually really changed the religion a lot.
So if Jesus had lived, it might be a different religion.
Yeah, it would be a somewhat different religion.
It's like saying if Bobby Kennedy had lived, or it would have been a different.
Right, no, it would have been a different country.
Right.
Which actually is more interesting to me because Kennedy, in the month before he was assassinated, said on national television
We've had William Pepper on the show talking about this, so we know a little bit about it.
Cannabis is less dangerous than cigarettes. He said that in 1968 on national television. So that's very different from Richard Nixon.
Oh, Nixon didn't care if it was or wasn't.
Oh no, Nixon had a southern strategy.
He didn't care one way or another.
No, what he really cared about was scaring people about black people, but also poisoning people's minds about the hippies demonstrating against
everything
his
was
war.
Political with Nixon, right? Everything was
Everything
like, how
was
did it
totally
fit
political.
into his calculations for
Right.
World domination? Is what it was all about.
But I didn't come to talk about 1974, except to say that we had an argument, a conversation, being Howard, and I said the most far out drug has to be this drug I just did. It's called ALD52, and he said no, it's Ibogaine, because I took Ibogaine and it got me off of heroin overnight. And I was just on a little road tour, where I was doing my history of the drug war and the movement to end it. And in 1994, 95, 96, when the National Institute on Drug Abuse discontinued the Ibogaine investigation that our government was doing to see if they could use this to stop crack cocaine, perhaps 300 people have been treated worldwide.
Why did they stop
Now it's tens of thousands.
Everybody always asks me, why would the government stop research into something that would cure something they consider a scourge?
Suboxone.
They wanted Suboxone instead.
Yeah, they already were well on their way to Suboxone. They had a limited budget. And
what is Suboxone?
Suboxone is actually a methadone substitute, so it doesn't work for.
It's like a longer acting.
All.
It's like one dose is good for a week instead of a day.
It's like a methadone that doesn't get you high. What you got to understand is the bias, the overwhelming concern of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. It's not to end addiction or to impact on the cure, on the spread of AIDS or hepatitis C, but to stop people from getting high.
It's Calvin, the Calvinist culture runs America, and people are proudly Calvinist, especially the ruling circles.
This is what I found out. I've been going over to this
work.
Group.
Your job is to work. We let you in our country. You should be on your knees, kissing the dirt.
The Ethical Culture Society has a lady that wanted to do an Ibogaine presentation, but 3 guys are stopping it, and it's because they're just anti-drug. So it really makes perfect sense. Let's ban the cure for heroin because we're anti-drug. But their way of looking at it is that it's coming from the wrong people. If Ibogaine was coming from government scientists, they might listen to it. Of course, if it was coming from the government would promote it, and you wouldn't need to do.
Well, they spend a lot of money.
forums.
They invest, since a lot of the people at the head of the medical and scientific establishments are like, the president of Harvard and the president of Yale and the president of the National Academy of Science, and all these people are in the ruling class of America or have been adopted into the ruling class of America. They, of course, their interests are going to be with the ruling class and with their own power, right? And saying, well, if you go to Harvard, you must know more than some hippie from Michigan who's living on the Lower East Side.
Well, the interesting thing is that NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, came up with its own synthetic Ibogaine that doesn't get you high. And of course, it turns out it really doesn't work. It's called 18-MC. And they spent about $6.5 million on it so far.
So the getting high part of the Ibogaine experience, you think the meeting of your ancestors, the visions, the ayahuasca-like experience that people have, the Ibogaine glow that they get from it is crucial and part of the deal, not just the chemical effect on the neurons of the brain?
No. It's a little more complex than that. What it is Ibogaine expresses a growth factor that kind of spritzes the neurons and makes them resprout and get the receptors out. If you've probably seen those pictures of brain cells before and after crystal meth, where they kind of frizzles off the ends of the cells.
No, frizzles them off.
Yeah, frizzles them off. Kind of burns.
It's very frizzling.
And this is what is counteracted directly by Ibogaine. But you see, what you have to understand is when two cells reestablish contact.
After they've been frizzled or before?
After they've been frizzled.
After they've been frizzled. It's never quite the same.
You experience it in here as an aha moment. A moment of
I'm frizzled.
No, a moment of understanding that you've had a breakthrough. And you can't exactly quantify it. You feel definitely that you
that the Ibogaine reconnects the cut signals. They'll cut wires in your brain.
When the reconnection occurs.
Right, like when the phone company comes and splices the wire back together.
When a connection occurs, you have a moment where you say, aha, I get it now. Right? Yeah. And that moment of getting it, which is kind of
I've never done Ibogaine.
Many times on an Ibogaine.
I don't know what it's like. I've never done Ibogaine.
Yeah, but you did LSD.
I was young.
I was
young. I was young and foolish.
Yeah, but actually, LSD is great stuff, and I would much rather do LSD than Ibogaine. If I had my druthers. Of course, the problem is you have to get good LSD, and that's almost impossible.
Organic mescaline.
No, but good LSD is hard to come by.
We should open the phones now. Now it's time to open the phones. What is your favorite psychedelic drug of all time?
Right. The big deal is at this thing on Saturday night, there was a guy who's practically recovered from Parkinson's disease, and he's able to get up in front of groups. He turns out to be a charismatic speaker. Mm-hmm. He described a lot of things about what Parkinson's does to you that I didn't really understand myself. Mm-hmm. But basically, he was so bad he couldn't use a knife and a fork. He couldn't write with a pen. He couldn't button his shirt. And after 26 days, he could button his shirt again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is on so little Ibogaine that he said he couldn't hardly feel it. So I was assuming he's
Robin Williams,
least getting as much as a buzz of a cup of coffee, but he says, no, not even that.
Right.
So it's 4 milligrams. You know how little 4 milligrams is? You can't see
4,000th of a gram.
4,000th of a gram. You can hardly see it.
And a gram is a 27th of an ounce. So it's
28th. And basically, this guy, on an amount that doesn't even interfere with sleep, because we were thinking microdoses is 20 to 25 milligrams, and that after 20 days you get some interference with your sleep. That's not good. Yeah. But this, you can just take it, and he found out he's probably going to have to take a little bit of Ibogaine every day for the rest of his life, but that's way better than dying. Mm-hmm. And basically Parkinson's kills.
And L-DOPA doesn't work.
L-DOPA turns into a toxic metabolite, which actually accelerates the progression of the Parkinson's.
Like in that Robin Williams movie, Awakening.
Right. So you want to be able
Everybody
to have
eventually goes back to being catatonic. They get there one day or whatever it is, their short period of time. And
but you see, on Ibogaine, you basically get the rest of your life.
Instead of one day and then you're back to being catatonic, you're actually cured from whatever it is.
Well, let's say it's not cured, because if you take away your daily dose of Ibogaine, you're going to relapse. But it's vastly improved. Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy can drive a car. He drove a car.
How much Ibogaine did he take? Just one time or multiple times?
Is
it just a one-time cure?
In a month. The amount he will do is 240 milligrams, which is 1/4 of a gram. Mm-hmm. We usually, for heroin, Give
So you have
between
to-
1,400 and 1,800 milligrams all at once.
So does it enough to actually feel the psychedelic effect?
None. No.
You don't feel it at all.
No,
How
it's
about
just the
does it wake you up?
non-psychedelic-
I mean, didn't the French use it in an over-the-counter medication
That
back
was a
in
little
the
bit more. That
20th
was like
century?
11. That was 11 milligrams.
And you would buy it next to the radium water.
Yeah. Whatever. You know.
Yeah, right.
But no, this is amazing because it's a completely non-psychedelic use of Ibogaine, but it really works. And what it impresses me is that this is more powerful stuff than I thought, number one. And number two, you know, since there is an effect with the high dose, you can get this worrisome kind of heart thing in about 1 in 300 people, which
It's
is
a stimulant, right? No, it's a central nervous system depressant, Ibogaine. I think.
No. What it is, it's
Didn't people die because
It's
of
a
that?
potassium channel blocker.
But haven't people died because their respiration faded out?
What happens is that it turns into a metabolite, noribogaine, which is serotonergic, which also stimulates the GDNF. And in between hour 14 and hour 22, when you really aren't on Ibogaine anymore, you're on the metabolite. People sometimes kind of fade out on us, and you have to
So it's
really
dangerous.
watch
Is that
them.
right? Is
This
that why
the big dose though?
the Ibogaine people, the people who treat people with Ibogaine all over the world,
Yeah.
and I've visited some of them and seen them in different disparate remote parts of the earth. People are doing Ibogaine, and people are traveling like pilgrims on a pilgrimage to the place of pilgrimage in order to be treated.
Exactly.
Some very remote corners of the world sometimes.
No, Mexico is that
Yeah.
remote.
Right, but there's other places as well.
Well, we have a really good place in the Bahamas people can go. It's half the price of Mexico.
Right. And so,
And, you know, I'm able to give my number, which is 347-343-1791. 347-343-1791.
the same
And people
year as
can call me.
the Paris terror, the revolution.
And yes, it was when they cut off
1791,
cut off
Robespierre.
the head of the King of France.
Robespierre, the year of the phone number that equates with the year of Robespierre.
Yeah, it's a little like French Revolutionary reference there. But the point is, now we have a use of Ibogaine where we really have to have it legal in this country, so old people can have little Ibogaine capsules in there.
Like medical Ibogaine, like medical
Right,
marijuana.
medical
Right.
Ibogaine.
But why is it illegal
And where
in
there's
the United
absolutely
States?
no risk.
I
of
just don't
any
understand.
bad
Everybody
side
has the
effects.
same question, and you really haven't answered it as well as and nobody's been able to ever answer it for years and years, is how come it is, and people ask me this all the time, that if the government hates drug addiction so much, why don't they adopt some way of curing it once and for all?
The reason is that embedded in the states, and you know, I was recently had a little enforced vacation because of my medical marijuana activities. I
know we
that
followed
in
your
these-
adventures here on the show.
I
You called in once, I think.
I found that the
Dana called in
states
from
are
jail.
completely controlled by the 12-step ideology. And they're embedded in the prison system, and they force everybody to go through this 12-step program,
which is pure 100% abstinence.
Well, yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
But
There is nothing wrong with that.
Unfortunately, only
I've
works.
had Andrew
in about
Tatarsky here. He says
5%
there's
of the
nothing
time.
wrong. Yeah.
Only about 5%
Right.
of the time
But
does it really
for those
work.
5%, it works.
But fine. What
Right?
about the other 95%?
Right, but we were saying we're not against abstinence.
And what I found out was when I was in like at least one AA group, they felt that this was like a personal insult, a personal attack
What was?
on Ibogaine. Just
Ibogaine
telling
was a
them
personal
about Ibogaine
was a personal
was
attack
like a personal insult.
on the abstinence folks.
Right.
Well, there is a conflict there, isn't there? Well, you can
Not
try.
really, because if the Ibogaine works, you're going to be abstinent.
Well, right, but there is not necessarily. Harm reduction is you continue to use.
Yeah, but it's not really.
And
a good
isn't the
idea
implication
to-
of Ibogaine is that
No, it's not
if the
really
heroin gets a
good-
little bad, you can take Ibogaine,
No,
feel
but,
better, go back to it.
Yeah, but it's not really a good idea to do that. People I know who tried that,
Going back and forth to it.
you know, you can kill
So
yourself.
you're
that way.
advocating abstinence. You're really the same. I mean, harm reduction would be opposed
Well,
to you.
there's one difference is that like we feel that the best thing that you can do after being strung out on hard drugs is to smoke pot. So what we believe is, like a lot of people in the medical marijuana movement say, you can use pot to wean yourself off of store-bought opiates, you know, because there's a lot of people who are medical junkies who, you know, they don't want to take opiates. 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 got strung out because they have chronic pain issues at the hands of doctors. And then they find that their pain actually responds to medical marijuana. But they're strung out on heroin by this time, or they're strung out on really expensive oxycodone.
Well, okay, it's
So,
a good. You've
what
introduced
Ibogaine
us.
does is it gets people through that 36 to 72 hours of detoxification.
Well, you've
And
introduced us.
they're about to do like a clinical investigation up in Vermont. And our mutual friend went up and talked to the guys who are going to be, pushing this in the Vermont legislature. And they're not talking about long-term effects of Ibogaine. They're simply saying Ibogaine is a way to get people through the withdrawal, through the pain of withdrawal.
All right.
And I just got a call today from somebody who's actually used Facebook, from somebody in Denver, which is where I went recently in my tour, one of the places. And she says, we got this lady, she's like holed up in the warehouse, she's covered with scabs, she's really, really sick. How can we get her some Ibogaine? She can't handle the stomach effects.
How about
Everybody has some
Afghanistan?
effect they can't.
Weren't you talking about Afghanistan last time you were on here?
Yeah,
and since this is international.
We are almost to the point of doing the first 200-person clinical trial of Ibogaine in Afghanistan.
Well,
And
so
it will be
have
huge.
you appealing to the United Nations to support this kind of international thing? Since the United States isn't going to help you, we went through all the reasons.
I have talked to people at the UN. They didn't call me back. Let's put it that way.
So there's no NGO that's related to Ibogaine. No.
No, there is. There's Madawa in Afghanistan.
And he's an NGO.
Yeah.
And that they're trying to treat people with Ibogaine in Afghanistan.
3 million people. Yeah.
Where do they get the Ibogaine in Afghanistan?
Well, that's the thing. We are going to have to come up with a way of making Ibogaine super cheap, and that's what I'm working on.
So they can bring it to internationally anywhere
we want to basically make it from this other plant that's not an endangered species.
So is that what UNGASS is going to be about? Are you going to try and approach
UNGAS
UNGAS?
is really going to primarily.
What's UNGAS mean?
Okay, let me explain.
It's not Beano.
There's a UN General Assembly special session on drugs, and that is about every 10 years.
So it's a rare event.
A three-day session at the UN where all kinds of heads of state and all kinds of people will talk. I mean, the drug war is, in Honduras, it's gang violence. In Staten Island, it's like overdoses. It's like an elephant. It's big. It's got ears. And
if you touch different parts of it, you don't know what it is, right?
You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But the UNGAS chose to have their session on the 20th of April. Which is, 420.
420. It's
and
like
this last year
the sacred day of marijuana smokers.
We actually had an impromptu smoke in Washington Square Park.
To sort of complement May 1st.
Yeah. And,
or the first Saturday of May.
Well, kind of like a rally to go out and get more people to come to the parade.
Right. So it's a pre-rally, but it's got its own. It's more political. I mean, 820 is really going down to the government maybe and directly lobbying. While first Saturday of May is a party with bands and speeches.
But our idea now is to do a flash mob at the UN. Everybody light up a joint on.
So it's the perfect day.
Light up a joint at 4:20 in the afternoon, and then kind of walk over to Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza for the rally. And we're working with the European Coalition for Just and Effective Drug Policy, and Mexicans, Zanapa, and the Colombians, and some people from some different countries. And I was at this.
Marijuana is being legalized everywhere. We're going to legalize it in Mexico.
I was at this meeting
Possibly
about this
in Mexico,
with
Uruguay.
some people from the Open Society Foundations, which is George Soros, and some other people. And their plan, of course, is to prioritize safe injection sites. Which I'm for. I don't think you should give out clean needles and then
more straight,
make them dirty before you use them.
They're straight harm reduction. They don't want to seem like they're giving priority to marijuana or to anything else.
And what they are upset about is that marijuana is just going to swamp them.
Right.
That you see that there's this big.
Well, they used to say you're just advocating a drug you like. You're just advocating a drug you like. What do you say to people? You're just advocating for a drug you like.
Totally makes sense.
Not for all the users.
You like.
Yeah, not for all the users. Well, George Soros doesn't do heroin.
No, it's the safest therapeutically active substance known to man. I was just in California.
There you go.
Dennis Perrone, the man who, legalized pot, went up to Santa Clara for the Emerald Cup, and they had 30,000 people on a state fair grounds, all smoking weed. So this...
They're all over New York City. It was a Times article on the front page of the Times today about it.
About what?
People are just smoking where they feel like all over the city.
I didn't see that. I got to look at that.
Yeah. It was somewhere in the paper. I don't know if it was the front page or inside.
Well, yesterday they had a thing about the lady that relapsed in Florida. She's from Staten Island, the grandmom. And she relapsed onto heroin. So every day they have something about drugs.
Right. So, well, there's an increase. We just said 2 minutes ago, but isn't there an increase in heroin use in part because there's an American war in basically the Golden Crescent there, and it's to be expected, right? If there was a war like it was 25 years ago in Central America, we'd be seeing more cocaine.
Yeah, well, anytime there's a lot of activity and there's coming and going, and it's not controlled by the customs because it's in the military. Well, remember when you were a kid, you ever watch Phil Silver's Sergeant Bilko?
Sure, Sergeant Bilko.
Bilko was always trying to do some scam.
He had one up his sleeve every show.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah. So that in real life, sometimes people do drug scams.
They'll hide them in the body bags and stuff like that.
Well, no, actually,
that's what they did.
I was my friend Ron. He said he found it in the walls of the plane. He found these compartments in the walls of the plane,
already built and installed, ready to go. Right?
Right.
Who could have done that, right?
Yeah, right.
To make a plane, to change a plane so it doesn't crash because it's overloaded in one direction or another.
Yeah, but that's. The thing is that it's going to be there, and there's
in Arkansas,
going to be.
Neenah, Arkansas, remember that?
But the thing is, people are going to do drugs. That is a fact of life, and we cannot even begin to lock them all up, and we cannot begin to persuade all of them not to do drugs.
But we can make it illegal. We can scare them, and we can make billions on it.
Yeah, but or the alternative, which is our way of doing it, which is to say, there is a painless detox that you can do to get off of heroin, and as a bonus, it works for crystal meth and crack cocaine.
Last half minute, Dana. Are they going to legalize? Let's stick to marijuana. Are they going to legalize marijuana this year, next year, soon? Are you going to see it? Or are we going to live to see it?
I think there's going to be a lot of stuff happening next year, but it won't be legalized in the state of New York.
No,
but it'll be legalized in some more. It'll be
because there's one crook after another.
No, it'll be legalized more in states with an initiative process.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Dana Beal, for joining us on Let Them Talk, and we'll see you again soon to keep up on this. And when we get closer to UNGASS, we'll talk more about that. Thanks.
Okay.